In that case, usually someone has blogged about it and explained it better. So Googling it helps. Another good reason to use open source. So many people are using it that they're pretty good about sharing solutions when they find them. Okay, multiple WordPress loops. There might be times when you want to pull in like the main chunk of content for a page, but then also maybe list recent blog post entries or something like that. In which case, there's a few different ways of doing it, but multiple loops are handy. So in this case, here's the Coventry Village website. Here in this top area, this is the main loop. So this is when I go into my WordPress dashboard, I put in the page content. That goes into that area here. But then I also wanted to include the most recent blog entries because that's the content that changes most often. And so for that, we used a second loop. And here is the example. We see here that the sort of general code for bringing in the main content is in this div. And then down here, we're just doing this little bit where we're just pulling in the posts, and we've offset by 0 because we're not using our main blog entry there. So the 5 most recent posts, and it's just grabbing in the title for each. Now I could have made this different. I could have done excerpts. I could have done excerpts with a thumbnail. There are lots of different ways you can tweak these things. So these loops are sort of general guidelines. It is kind of modular and plug and play. You can sort of experiment with which bits you want to include. Okay. The next most important thing here is the WordPress template hierarchy. And basically, when you create a WordPress theme, you have several different files in it, and each has different functions. So you'll have a page.php would be your theme for general pages. Single.php would be for individual posts, but there's a hierarchy to them that they will usually default to a more general one. So for example, here, let's say you were creating a special page about squirrels. You wanted that page to look different than your other pages. You could create a named template for it called pagesquirrel.php. If that doesn't exist, it would look for the next level up, which would be what they call this as a page slug. So if your name of the file, if your name of your page was squirrel, it'd be page-squirrel.php. Next, it would look for your page ID. If that didn't exist, it would just use your general page.php, and if that didn't exist, it would use index.php, which is sort of your general one, so that it will always use the default file if there's nothing else, but you can customize pages as much as you want. I wonder if it would help if we looked at, this is Fugu is what I use for SFTP, but I thought it might help. Here on the right, these are all the files I've got in this particular theme, just to give you an example of all the different kinds you can have. I have several for pages, for sidebars, the generic page, header. So you can see that this is sort of giving you a sense of the variety of pages that are part of the theme, but your total number, if you weren't customizing it at all, could be a much smaller number than this. So generally, index.php is sort of the default template for everything. You could almost function with only that and a few other things. Then all your pages would look pretty similar. That's usually used for the homepage of your site. Home.php is normally the homepage of your blog. And you can also name these, and you can pick different ones to use. Page.php is typical for your regular sites, regular pages within a site. Single.php is for individual blog posts. So if we think about the loops that we just looked at, those are your main template pages. And as I explained earlier, since we're short on time, I'm very broad strokes is what I'm doing here, but I've got examples on each of these pages here on the site. So categories and archives, we talked a little bit before that They come in different flavors, and these category and archive templates are meant for displaying the list of items in that particular archive type. So, um, date.php, for example, would list all the things in a certain date range. And this could be depending on how you've arranged your content, but here we'll click through to this one. So date.php is arranging the content for this archive that shows everything from 2010. Now, you could also, the same archive would affect everything for a week or a day or whatever date range you wanted to. And if you don't have this file there, it will default to a regular archive, but there might be something, you might want to add a special paragraph that talks about a time period, something like that. Just nice to be able to customize them. Category.php, sort of like we described before, wildebeests or giraffes or whatever categories you have. Tag.php is handy if you're using tagging as part of your system. I like to arrange my posts by both categories and tags, and I think of categories as being the broad concepts. Like, you know, we were in a department store, and you'd have your meat area, your produce area, and say baked goods. Those would be my categories. And when you look at a list of those, that almost becomes like a table of contents for your site. These are the main kind of things that we're talking about in this blog. But then tags, I think, is being more specific. So tags could be bacon, pork chops, lettuce. And if you use a tag list, people can see, you know, all the tags. And it's sort of like the fine-tuned index for everything on your blog. And they can see actually every tag that you've got. Taxonomy.php is an interesting one. Are many of you use custom taxonomies?
I'm completely lost on taxonomies. I understand tags, I understand categories. Post type is what I thought taxonomies were. I got that taken care
Right.
of. I got that. What the hell is it?
So taxonomy, a category is a taxonomy, and a tag is also a taxonomy. But then you can also create your own. So let's say I was doing a movie review site, or let's say I was doing a review site about books and movies. And I was going to have reviews in there. So possibly I would use reviews as a category. But I might also have a category for previews, where maybe every post was a YouTube preview video or something like that. Now, I also have genres like horror and romance and comedy, and you start getting so many categories going on that it's sort of getting distracting. So you could create a taxonomy that was movies, and then use categories within that for types of movies, as well as types of tags. And
So, like, I could do pops or flavors, cola, spicy,
Right.
this, that.
yeah,
Are they stored in the same table then?
I think they're sort of in the same table. I think it might, I'm not quite sure. I haven't played with them enough, but I'm sort of, they're intriguing me. I'm thinking if you were doing something like an online magazine or newspaper, I think they could be useful, because you might use them for columns, and, you know, when you've got lots of different sections that recur in a publication like that, but you also want to organize things by date or volume or issue, I think those with those custom posts in combination would be a good way of arranging that kind of content. We've got so many different types of things going on. So I have to dig into it more. There's a link here, the Essential Guide to Taxonomies, that has a good explanation of it.
It is. It's in the taxonomy table. See, I wondered why there wasn't a category table, but in the taxonomy table, these would be basically so you category, then category,
And tags.
no tags, but something. There's no these options. It's probably terms. Sorry.
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, so basically, so you can add your own, and it sounds like it would go there as well.
Yeah, it stores it in terms, and
These category templates, as I said before, these are the pages where you're looking at, say, all the posts for something like the category wildebeests. And on a lot of blogs, you see that they just show all the complete posts. So you go one, big blog post, then another blog post, another, and you scroll down, and you've read, like, you've skimmed through 3 or 4, and then at the bottom you see a previous or a next button, so you can go to another page. And you know that your friend Tom, who has this blog, wrote something that you wanted to know about a while back, and you don't remember when, so you're like, keep going back and forth, scrolling through all these pages trying to find it, and it takes forever. I find that very annoying, so something I like to do with a lot of the category archives is to post a list instead. And let's see, here's an example of that.
Are these all living on Flickr for our enjoyment?
These are not all living on Flickr. I took 4,500 pictures in the Galapagos, so only a fraction have been uploaded so far. I'm way behind on that. So here, this is a page where I'm listing all categories, all 2 categories that we have on this site. So that I chose to use regular list format. When you go into a particular category, in this case the category is plugins, I decided to create, instead of using just a list, we've got our headline and then an excerpt, and then below it, it lists the categories as well as the tags that this particular entry is in. And I find this gives you a sense of, okay, what are these posts about? What are the related posts? So I could click, if there are more than one post talking about SEO, I could click on the SEO tag and see the related posts. I find it makes it a lot more easy to browse for related content. And that gets into the template hierarchy more, is that, I could make all of my category pages work that way with the excerpts, but maybe I wanted the giraffe category to have those excerpts, but I wanted the wildebeest category to just do the links. Maybe I had 500 wildebeest posts, and I knew having those excerpts would get too unwieldy. So I could customize on a category basis and say, okay, for this one, do it this way. For that one, do it that way. Let's go to custom page templates. So pages, of course, we're looking at a page here. We saw a little bit of code before that. This is the whole code for this page. Pretty simple HTML. It's just bringing in this content. But what's nice about pages is that you can name individual pages. So in this case, I want this page to have this particular bird picture on it. These are blue-footed boobies. And I wanted it to use this particular menu. And most of my menus are the same, except for